Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, How to Rapidly Build Personalized Customer Experiences Without Disruption. I'd like to say a really quick thank you to Reuters Events for putting together today's webinar and fantastic panel. I'm Chris Frankland. I'm the founder of InsurTech 360 and the Chief Innovation Officer with CareBridge International. I'm a mentor to startups around the world and have spent my entire career building solutions that leverage people, process, technology, and data to reimagine the insurance and customer experience. I'm really thrilled to talk about this particular topic today because, as we know, customer demands have really changed drastically over the past couple of years and continue to evolve at a rapid pace. I spent 3 years with a carrier on the technology team early in my career, and the reality is, even with significant investments, legacy systems, document-heavy processes, continue to put a burden on the organization's ability to respond quickly to customer demands and expectations. With that said, yes, there's the pressure from the customer to respond quickly and proactively to deliver a personalized experience, but at the same time, there's the consistent need to maintain, manage, and govern existing platforms and technology to keep the day-to-day business running. So how do we balance the two? How can insurance carriers deliver on building an outstanding customer experience without necessarily ripping out all of the existing technology? And how do we still continue to drive forwards with building a better, more customer-centric user experience? So today, I'm delighted to be joined by a fantastic group of panelists, and together we'll be taking a look at how do we speed up claims processing, how can we transform the claims experience, how do we balance the role of people and technology throughout the claims journey, and how do we deliver a personalized, more self-service driven customer experience? So without further ado, I would like to give a big welcome to Laurie Pierman, the VP of Claim Operations and Shared Services at Amerisure, Art Harrison, co-founder and Chief Growth Officer at Daylight, and last but not least, LP, Laurie Pun, Director, Claim Strategy and Innovation at the Auto Club Group. So welcome all of you today. Thank you for joining us. Really look forward to getting your thoughts on this really important topic. And just a quick reminder to the audience: please submit your Q&As as we go forwards. We'll get to the questions at the end of the presentations. So let's kick things off. Laurie Pierman, I would love to start with you, and perhaps you can share some of your thoughts around this really interesting topic.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Chris, and welcome everyone. I am excited to learn from my fellow panelists, like many of you that I'm sure are on this. We're all looking for what's the secret? How do we do this? You know, frankly, when Chris was talking, I'm like, that's a lot. And you know, how do we do that? How do we accomplish all that we want to do? Because I think many of you are like me. I don't think I'm alone in that we all struggle with the challenges of having enough resources, whether that's people, time, or money. And usually it's multiples of those that we struggle with finding the balance. And at the same time, so much needs to be done in our industry. I think for so long, insurance was maybe a little bit more on the conservative side and a little bit more of a laggard. And it really has sped up over the last several years, the innovation and the expectations of our customers. So I'm from Amerisure Insurance. We are a mid-sized regional commercial carrier located, our headquarters is in the suburbs of Detroit, but we have 12 offices throughout the country, the United States. And, you know, let me start by saying there's no silver bullet. I wish there was. I wish there was like this great big secret. So I'm hoping maybe Laurie or Art will have the secret that I'll be able to learn from. But I don't have the secret. But what I was thinking about is what are some of the things that can be done to make this a little bit more manageable? And one of the first things is, you know, breaking it up into smaller chunks. I think that goes without, you know, it's pretty normal when there's a big goal, whether that's a personal goal or professional or strategic. Where do you want to go? But then have those smaller checkpoints, those smaller mid-sized goals, smaller goals, to help you keep from getting overwhelmed, to see progress and see success. That keeps you motivated to keep pushing forward. I think a lot of times when we have these multi-year ventures that are so large and so much involved, it's really easy to get discouraged. It's hard to stay motivated sometimes. So having those small wins really does help. And it also allows you to be agile, right? Things happen, things come up. I mean, COVID came up, we weren't expecting it. How do you pivot? How do you change instead of going down a path that maybe situations have changed, that path no longer makes sense? So by keeping this manageable and keeping those smaller goals, you can make change and you can be a little bit more agile in your thought process and what you accomplish. The other thing that I think is really important, and this might get to the dollar piece, because I think that's where a lot of us struggle, is having the dollars to be able to do some of these innovations. And one of the things that I have found really helpful, and I wasn't expecting it, is looking at what we already have in place. Whether it's one of your core systems, Duck Creek, Guidewire, many of us have those in our shops along with other core systems. A lot of times there is other technology that they have built that you are able to leverage that allows you to move faster because it's already built to help in that digital journey. It's kind of pre-built, it's already hooked in, so that it's less effort. But other times that may come to you at either a discount or be part of your actual license. So that can help you with that. Why reinvent the wheel when you already have access to something? So that would be another area that I've looked at and has really, really helped us. And then finally, look at the organization as a whole. One of the things I found is that many of the insurtechs that are out there, many of the vendors, software, whatever that may be, they have services or products that can be applied to multiple areas of the organization. So, for example, Claims has been working with one vendor, and we found they actually have some underwriting tools, some underwriting insights that we're able to leverage, that we may be able to leverage. Why go find a different vendor and go through the vetting process and the contract process and all of that when you have someone who has tools that you're looking at that could help your organization? Leverage those. Not only can you become more of an important player with that vendor partner or with that software company, sometimes there are considerations when it comes to pricing. But one of the biggest things that I found is it helps reduce that technological debt that you carry by having the IT department that has to manage multiple vendors. Personally, I learned with that Apache issue that happened in late December, there's a lot of people that we interact with. So it's really helpful if you can reduce that number for when something comes up. It really helps your IT department work more effectively and more efficiently, and also gives you some insights when you do partner with them, how to go about doing that if someone else, another area of your organization has already gone through some of that pain. So those are some of the things that I found. Well, none of those are the silver bullet and the secret, big, great, mysterious secret that's out there. Those were ways that I found to really help us move forward and make progress much more quickly and more seamlessly than we had previously.
Laurie, thank you so much. No, I think that's a terrific summation of perhaps how to get some quicker wins as well, right? When you're breaking things up into smaller bites and segments, often when you're looking at just kind of this huge holistic picture, it's difficult to see an end in sight, right? Because you're like, okay, we're here, but we need to go here. But when you're picking off those bite-sized pieces, it helps a ton. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. Again, to folks out there, please get your questions in and lined up. Art, we heard a lot there about kind of this idea of agile, thinking about Scrum. How do we deliver smaller components successfully? And I know that's something that you are very passionate about, and we would love to get your kind of feedback there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me here. And I can't claim that I have that silver bullet, but we spend our days. I'm the one of the co-founders and chief growth officer of Daylight Automation, and this is what we spend our days with our clients. And we're a software platform, and our mission is really to improve and humanize every interaction between people and process. So this is what we think about all day. And what's unique about our position is, we're not just an insurtech. We really are across all verticals. Whether it's any of the financial services, banking, insurance, pharmacy, government, and the pains, the desires and the pains are this, they're universal, right? What you're trying to create, the experience, whether it's a claims process or policy changes. The experience is you're trying to make it easier for your employees or your customers to be able to interact with your process. And there's no difference between, you interacting as a citizen with your government, you trying to get interact with your pharmacy. So there are lessons that we see as commonality across everyone. And it is unique. There's, these industries have historically been slow to adopt or slow to make change. And there's a lot of roadblocks along the way, but it is possible. And that's what's really exciting is we're seeing organizations bring transformation in-house, bring innovation in, and start making change at a faster rate. And so that is really exciting. When we're engaging, there's really three things that we tend to talk to our clients about. They're looking to build on our platform and they're thinking about their digital strategy. And there's really three things that we tend to bring up in terms of the change that they need to make. So I'll share them now, see if they should, if you see the commonalities across what you're doing. And the first is to change the way they think and the types of experiences that they're looking to impact. Historically, all the money went to a couple of key processes. We got to get more customers in the door. Of course you do. So what is our, how are we bringing them in? We have a claims or renewal process, or we need a mobile app, and all of the IT spend, all the innovation went into one or two, three areas. But if you're looking at the digital first carriers, if you're looking at the expectations of customers, every touch point is an opportunity to build a personal relationship to further that relationship with your client. So we're always talking about changing where you can bring change, and the limitations were, what is the ROI, what's the cost on IT? But every time that someone wants to change a beneficiary, change their account, update their banking information, if they've had a wonderful onboarding experience and then they're back to paper again, they're back to, did I do it right? Did I actually add my spouse properly? You're breaking down that experience that you're trying to create with them as a brand, as an organization. So changing and looking in the shadows, talking to your teams, finding where you can make impact. Those are often the places, they're smaller projects. You can have a quick win and you're impacting things and differentiating yourself. We also talk about changing an approach to who's solving the problems. Obviously, and I think you talked on this, Chris, at the very beginning, there's a need for governance and ownership, so that you're not just doing, everything ad hoc. But a lot of times, the people that know processes the best are at the front line. And if you're only solving from an IT perspective, you either end up, going down that multi-year process of, we're going to create a new data lake and we're going to create some new thing, but it's not actually impacting the pain that is there, the people that are correcting forms, that are going back and forth with clients multiple times. So finding ways to incorporate other members into agile teams, into the projects, and bring their knowledge right into the experience is huge. And just anecdotally, whether it's a carrier, whether it's a bank, one of the things that we often encourage them to do is just go talk to the people that do the process. And it's amazing. They're like, yeah, this is what I'm told, but I changed this and this, and I have to correct this before I can actually process it. And if you can bake that in and build that into the customer experience and just get it right from the onset, it makes a world of difference. And the other thing, and I think this kind of goes to breaking things into small chunks, is change the approach of how you solve problems. So a lot of times people solve, I always refer to it as inside out versus outside in. So a lot of times people start from the inside, and there's a need to make sure you have a clean data model, that you have, your infrastructure in place. But when you go that route, you have a whole lot of precursor work before you see any value. And if you change your approach and you start thinking from the outside in and say, what, I'm a customer or I'm an employee, what's going to impact me the most, and start at the experience level, you can build the ideal approach for anyone that's interacting with the process. And even if it's ultimately going to land in a legacy system or your Duck Creek, your Guidewire, or even a green screen terminal, you don't have to rip and replace that entire system. That might be really great for what it does, but it's the experience. And I use TurboTax and the tax process as my common example, and it really part of the thesis of where Daylight was created. I can't go and change the IRS. I can't go change their process. That's baked in. It works for them. But you can create a more intuitive way to interact with that process, to guide me through my taxes. Did I get married? Were there changes? And you can create an amazing experience that feels personal and intuitive without having to go and change the 100,000 auditors and the process and all the stakeholders along the way. And so there's ways to make impact, and people need to start changing that approach and saying, let's start with the problem or the experience we want and go from there. So those are three of the things that we talk about when we talk about improving the experience and doing it in a way that's not disruptive to your daily business.
Oh, thank you. My word, some terrific insights there. And I think your point about kind of humanizing the customer interaction is such a critical one, because as a technology person myself, I think the temptation sometimes is to throw technology at everything, but really it's looking at that broader customer journey, like you said, kind of working from the outside in. What are we trying to do? What experience do we want to deliver to our customers, and how do we align the tools and the technology to do that? And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about low code and no code and all that fun stuff later. But thanks again, Art, for that. LP, I know you're passionate about this stuff as well. So would love to get your thoughts on how things are going at your end and perhaps for the future.
Well, Chris, many of the points that Art, Laurie, and you made are really resonating with me. At the Auto Club Group, I lead and have oversight for our claim technology roadmap. I lead the build, implementation, organizational change management for our core platforms and for our insurance modernization efforts. So when you touch policy, you're going to touch claims. Primarily at ACG, it's personal lines, auto and home. And so we have a lot of opportunities from a B2C standpoint to impact our members. We're a membership organization. And I have had operations reporting to me, and now I have the privilege of leading our innovation efforts. So we have a team of 10 of us focused specifically on tech and innovation and emerging trends. And we sit in the business, but we sit between IT and we sit between our line of business stakeholders. So we speak tech and we speak business talk. And what I think allows us to innovate faster, leaner, meaner is that we really understand the use case, and we, as what was described about involving the business, involving the voice of the customer, which also includes the voice of your internal customer, it's really important to be able to have that layer translating, because you're going to have better adoption and you're going to have less churn when you roll it out. And, I think that there was a really good point about being very insightful and being very thoughtful about how you roll out tech and making sure that the team members that touch the customer have so many nuggets and so much great insight and thought leadership that including them at the table is something that we're really committed to. So a couple of things: when you innovate, you've got to have the right talent, the right mix of innovation, the right tech. I can't stress enough the right partners. I've had the privilege of working with some insurtechs and fintechs over the last couple of years that have really allowed us a seat at the table to influence their modernization roadmaps. They've allowed us to A/B test and really give thought leadership and design thinking sessions. So when we look to disrupt our process or hyper-personalize, we're trying to pick those partners that will allow us to seat at the table. Some of our vendor partners are very mature in their process, so we end up getting their next enhancement, but not really influencing what we believe are pain points. So we look for those partners that are inclusive. And in many instances, we improve together. So we have the knowledge and the industry insight on the customer experience, what is claims, what is this new tech, and does it resonate? Will it resonate with the customer? Will it resonate with our adjusters? Because you're augmenting traditional ways of working. So we have that conversation, we have that dialogue, and it's really important for us to partner with colleagues in the industry. I do a lot of networking across the industry to get thought leadership from my peers, but our journey starts with selecting the right processes and the right partners. There was some conversation around making sure you optimize before you automate. There's a lot of us that have some bruises and scars for trying to get to the sexy without being really disciplined about that. At ACG, we're not focused on completely no touch and high. We're really focused on the right touch. So not this high touch, no touch. So we want to find that right balance. And we really believe you need the right touch so that we can deliver empathetic, engaging experiences at scale, but also efficient and really rewarding to improve retention. I think claims is a key part of that insurance journey where you can make or break your reputation with the customer. We use data to inform us. How is our tech doing? Is it lowering costs? Is our CSAT needle moving? Is our employee opinion survey moving? That we're really enabling our colleagues to focus on very engaging, very meaningful work. And when you remove some of that transactional piece, you can focus on the engagement. You can focus on the empathy. You can focus on the experience. So as Laurie pointed out, we start small, we continue to iterate, but the first step in innovating the future is to step off and make sure that you're leading in a very concerted way. So for us, around speedy claim processing, around building personalized experiences and being disruptive without disruption to your team, some of the things that we do is we don't have an API for all of the new tech that we implement. Sometimes we start really small, we ideate, we have a soft launch, we bring in our adjusters as digital agents to help inform. We're very, very leaned into organizational change management. We're analyzing our communities, we're analyzing approach. We do a lot of demos. We invite the business in very early to requirements. We test drive a lot of our innovations because being better informed about speed bumps in a soft launch or in a proof of value. And then on the back end of that, Chris, I felt like you were reading my mind. We are looking at some intelligent automation, such as process mining. We're looking at AI and ML models with our vendor partners. We're using sentiment analysis, voice analytics. So we've got this cool suite of tools. We're implementing a new CRM. And so where it is for us is, I think our future is bright, tons of possibilities. If you can navigate that intersection between legacy and cutting edge tech, and with us having a lot of systems through M&A and a lot of different processes, it's just that balance. So a lot going on at ACG.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. No, thanks, Laurie. You made some as always some really good points there, and I think your point about it being kind of right touch as opposed to just low touch is so spot on, because I think back to TurboTax, which is a very digital workflow, but increasingly they've started to add people back into that process, right? So you have maybe 85% of it that's automated, but the other 15, the really complex stuff, they very quickly realized that a robot or AI or machine learning is not the full or the complete answer. So you kind of have this really nice hybrid approach of technology and people, kind of helping to navigate that rather challenging process. So no, this is a terrific discussion. I want to thank all of you for your comments. We are getting some questions coming through for the Q&A. We've got some good time left to answer some questions. So if there's anybody out there who has some questions, please keep those going and coming in. I'm going to kick things off with a fairly broad one, which I think you know, is open to all of you. And Laurie, Pierman, I'll start with you. I'm going in the order of my screen. It may be different from yours, but so that, you know, to kick things off, what has been the biggest challenge around modernizing, and how have you worked to solve it, either individually or as a business?
So I think it's evolved over time. You know, our initial struggle, I think, was around focus. You know, where do you start? I mean, there's so much out there. I heard someone, you know, mentioned earlier, InsurTech Connect. You know, just one example for, I'm sure quite a few people have been to those types of conferences. There's so much exciting, cool stuff. How do you focus? And it doesn't become like kind of shiny object and, you know, where you're constantly shifting and looking. So that was the first thing. And once we figured out where we wanted to focus and how we wanted to focus and what our plan was and have our roadmap, that helped tremendously. I think the other piece was, and this was really touched on in Art's comments, is that outside in view and shifting that focus and what is the experience we want our customers to have. And that probably has been where is really, are we sure that we say we know what our customer wants, but are we really sure we know what our customer wants? So how do we validate that? And we've made some pretty significant investment in that area over the last year with new roles in the organization, new teams. We now have a claims experience organization that is solely focused on looking at the experience. And that has been a tremendous advancement, but it took a while to have everyone in the organization kind of come together and understand the value and how you do that and how do we best do that fits our culture, our organization, because everyone's different. So that probably was the struggle, that the challenge that we had that we've really focused on over the last year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll come back to the cultural part of it shortly, because I do think that's a huge piece of the puzzle. Laurie, I mean, when it comes to kind of the biggest challenges you've seen perhaps over the past couple of years, what have you seen, and you know, how did you kind of work around it, find a solution?
I think when we look at tech and you're augmenting ways of working in traditional ways, we've seen some resistance, and I've talked to my peers across the industry. How do you make change frictionless for the customer and your end user that's really wants those amazing tools? Some want to lean back onto more traditional ways of working. So we're really focusing on organizational change management, on publicizing the what's in it for me. We recently rolled out bidirectional texting and digital payments. And the way that we originally rolled it out is our adjuster will introduce the opportunity for you to pay digitally. In the future, working with our fintech partner, we want to take that out of the hands of our adjusters or our payment issuers and let the customer decide, right? And because our net promoter score when we pay digitally is over 1,000 basis points higher. So we have the data. So what we're doing is we're telling those stories. We recently had a contest, it's the 100-100 Club, modeled after the 40-40 in Major League Baseball. And the first 10 adjusters got to 100 messages and 100 digital payments, got a corporate award. And more importantly, we have a great team, a Claim Academy team of professional designers, and we did a Velfie. So we published a video selfie of our 10 leaders, our innovators, our change champions, and they had little noodle figures, and they really talked about their journey with tech and why it makes sense. And these are adjusters speaking to adjusters. So really you're hearing the voice of your colleague. So we're trying to really understand, how do we communicate the with them, We have data that backs it up. So we're engaging our management team. We've got these digital agents that I talked about, because you've got to be willing to hear the pain and then iterate out and improve. So we're continuing in that continuum to try to balance that. And then on the customer side, we are looking at our digital inspection experiences. Like in home, we may not be able to offer you a photo estimating experience, but if we can triage your loss, send the right eyes on site, like maybe you need a large loss adjuster, not a field adjuster, touch points that can create friction. So how do you blend all that tech? And we're really listening to the voice of the customer and the voice of our employee to blend all of those pieces to try to be more insightful and reimagine that experience.
Yeah, thanks, Laurie. And I think that the two Lauries, you've both kind of made the point that you have this kind of internal customer, the employee, and the external customer, the insured. So it's kind of, you're trying to listen to both sides, right? Because if you create this better user experience internally, that ultimately benefits the external customer experience as well. So I think that's a terrific way of looking at it. Art, at Daylight, you mentioned you kind of cross multiple verticals, and you're seeing, I'm sure, similar challenges faced within healthcare, insurance, banking, lots of paper, analog processes, and
Yes.
and whatnot. What are you seeing as perhaps the biggest challenges, and how are you guys helping to navigate that?
Yeah. First, and I promise I will answer. I want to just. I'm passionate about one topic, so it's like a PSA. I want to follow up on something that LP said in her introduction, and that is, we're a scaling company and we've been growing really fast. But from when we were just a couple of people starting out, it goes back 5 years or so now. One of the things that we used to talk to the banks, the insurers that we dealt with, is how hungry technology vendors are to actually have the insight and to work with these large organizations. So when you're talking about that seat at the table, we used to, have to explain to them that, like, you have a team that'll work themselves, down to the bone because they want the knowledge from what they're helping you in and the return they're helping you see to grow their own offering, their knowledge, their platform. And so always, I couldn't second that more. When big vendors, small vendors, like, work with them. They want to bring you value. They want to succeed themselves. And a lot of that comes from building their roadmap and seeing where they can extend the value they bring. And that relationship, when it's not there, you're missing out on a huge way to tap into potential future value for you as a carrier. So just want to second that, because I think it is it's an overlooked point that a lot of people, they just miss out on that opportunity. In terms of, just the blocks in that transformation, I think the biggest one, and it's going to sound a little cliched, but it really is a commitment. I think what COVID has demonstrated across every industry is that change is possible, and it's possible fast. The projects that we were involved in, as it was becoming a pandemic, we worked with a travel insurer, and every day before it was actually declared a pandemic, they had call centers, everyone was calling in, like, what's my policy? What's my coverage? And that was changing based off of whether it's declared a pandemic, do you have pandemic coverage? And, the number of changes, in the hundreds of new deployments within like a week or two, because the roadblocks were gone, and the motivation and the organization-wide commitment to, we need to make this change now, really showed what is possible. And, prior to that, we saw a lot of repeating patterns. There was a lot of, I love innovation teams. I spent a lot of time with them, but depending on where they were empowered, sometimes they sat outside the organization and they had great ideas, but none of them were operationalized. And we saw sometimes them getting folded into the business. And so I think it really is, a lot can be done. There's also a million reasons why it can't be done. And there's going to be a million people that are going to tell you why it can't be done. But, if you just look at when push comes to shove, the rate of change, what's there, and it usually starts from the top down. Like, we're going to make change. And as both Lauries have said, we're going to do it incrementally. Like, you'll see value along the way. That'll help build that commitment. But that to me has been the most fundamental thing. You need to empower your teams to take risks. You need to demonstrate and show results along the way and show progress. And you need to not aim for perfection, because perfection, you want to get to an amazing experience, but perfection will stop you from ever even releasing something out and getting hands on it. So that is universal. And the organizations that are finding ways to break down those barriers are the ones that are the ones you'll see in panels, the ones you'll see at conferences, showcasing another use case, because it is possible. It's just a matter of how you think about it and where you prioritize your time.
Yeah, thanks, Art. You raise a really good point there about you mentioned obviously COVID. We're still kind of figuring out what's where things are heading and so forth. But I think my next, it kind of leads into my next question a little bit, which is how has COVID impacted the ability for organizations to address the customer experience? Has it helped, or has it perhaps hindered the process? And I'll let you all have a stab at it. But I think just listening to your comments, so much of it is centered around being prepared, right? I've got a couple of Scout kids, and you tell them all the time, be prepared. And it's for reasons like that, right, where you want to try and be proactive as opposed to reactive. And I think Laurie, Pierman, you talked a lot about that earlier, about kind of instilling a cultural identity within the team to enable that type of transformation going forwards. But would love to get your thoughts on that. Laurie, I've mentioned you, Laurie Pierman. So many of you, any comments on that particular topic?
Yeah, COVID was not a great experience in a lot of different ways, but I do think that the positive out of it. So try to find the positive out of any situation, even when it's negative. What's this kind of, what do we learn from it? What's the silver lining? And I think in a lot of ways, when I look back over the last 2 years, COVID helped. I think it allowed everyone, we realized we had to do things differently, and we were forced to. When I was on a panel shortly, maybe 6 months or so, or after COVID started, one of the panelists said something that really resonated with me. If we had tried as a industry to say, whole company's going to work remote overnight, we're going to go to all full remote, it would have taken years, because traditionally insurance organizations are really conservative. So we would have done focus groups and panels and feedback sessions and tweaks and policies and HR manuals. And I mean, it would have taken years to get to that point, and literally
hang on.
All of us did it overnight for the most part. And so I think
we lost you there for a little bit.
Sorry, my internet. Hey, COVID, right? Internet's a little bit stable, so here's a great example of it. But I do think that people become, so that would have been really embarrassing prior to COVID, but we've all been there with internet connections. So now it's just one of those things that happens. But that's what I think COVID did, is that it provided a little bit of cover to do things differently. And I also think our customers and the people that we interact with were going through so much, they got it. Things have to change. Things have to be different. They were working different. So I think COVID provided an opportunity and a cover to innovate a little bit differently and a little bit faster.
Yeah, no, thanks, Laurie. Appreciate that. And I think, thinking about, the partnership side, right? InsurTech, looking at, talking about vendors and whatnot, LP, I mean, anything there that you'd like to add that, perhaps things that helped you guys navigate kind of COVID a bit more effectively?
I think we had many things on our roadmap that really we put in the acceleration zone. So I had ops reporting to me this time last year. I had our technology innovation team reporting to me, and really now we're doubled down on our policy modernization efforts, from really onboarding and selling all the way through to fulfillment of a claim. So one of the things I've seen is resilience. We've had to be way scrappier with how we address technology. We are looking at tools like process mining. We're looking at more intelligent automation. We are very hungry to A/B test with our vendors. So we like to offer first to go out and test and ideate, because it allows you a voice in how the technology is really evolving and developing, and it allows you a voice to address your pain points. So some of the projects that we had, we were going to drip into prod. We call it the light switch, right? Like with our bidirectional texting, we plan to go unit by unit. Auto physical damage first, high transaction, then home, then personal injury, then casual liability. We said, you know what, it's not that deep. It's SMSing about your claim, right? And it's communication at the speed of light, using something as ubiquitous as a cell phone, because all of us have it typically within a foot of where we are. So we literally doubled down. We piloted it in my unit. And so May, we're like, okay, sign the contract. We got to get this rolled out. We got it rolled out to over 800 users by September. It was the same thing with digital payments. We had a month where we soft launched to test the financials. We picked medical adjusters. We picked auto physical damage adjusters. And we allowed one cycle for it to go through, and it went over a quarter. And then by December, we were implementing for all claims, vendors and customers. Some of my colleagues went customers first, then vendors, but we worked with our fintech and we're like, we have to do this, and we can't let it drip into production where it is standing in the way of other more imaginative and amazing innovation. So it's all about, I think, making sure that you're scrappy, and you really do have to be scrappy, because customers aren't judging you or weighing their experience against other insurers. They're weighing you against CX giants like Amazon and Google. Yeah. It's so easy. Zappos, right? You have to be in that zone to deliver those rewarding and frictionless experiences, or you've really lost your customer at hello.
Yeah. Laurie, yeah, absolutely spot on. I've got a great question from the panel, from the audience. That kind of dives a little bit into some of that, but thinking about creating an authentic, empathetic experience. Sometimes it seems like a bit of a buzz term, but what does that mean? What does that mean to you? How do you go about creating an authentic, empathetic customer experience? And I'd love to start with you, because I think part of that journey is having the right tools available to be able to iterate quickly, to experiment, to test, to be able to kind of, work in an agile manner. Whereas before, coming from the traditional waterfall method, it's very challenging. It's not easy to test and experiment, right? So, Art, what do you, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to keep myself in check, because I'm like, let me just talk now for like 5 hours. I do think it really, so first of all, that iterative, I know LP's talking about the A/B testing. It is so important. And we, when you think about that customer experience, first and foremost, we often talk about decoupling that presentation layer, the experience layer from all the other change that you're going to ultimately want to make if you're going to straight through processing for something, or, the uprooting of some other core system, because you're not going to get it right. You're gonna have changes frequently. If it was cut and dry, we used to kind of joke about this, like the first cut of digitization was, we have paper forms, just take them and put them on the website. Or, oh, we need to be digital, we'll take them and we'll just recreate them one-to-one as a web form. But never digital, right? That's an amazing experience. And obviously there's value gained in that, but it's not, if that's it and you don't have budget, you don't have time, or it's too difficult to go back and iterate on that, you haven't actually hit your mark. The simplest thing that we tend to use internally, and it was kind of like our internal tagline in the early days, is any interaction should be as simple as having a conversation. And that to me is, especially in the insurance space, is still the benchmark. I as we were starting this business, my wife was pregnant, we were getting our first life insurance policy, and we went the broker route. And so someone came to our house and sat down with us and talked to us about our needs and got to know us as a family. Oh, you have this is notice my wife is pregnant, and let's, think about these different options that you have, and what are your aspirations? You're starting a business. Okay, you may need to be protected in this way. So we had a conversation, and the output of that conversation was the completed, documentation and the process work to go apply with the right product from the right carrier. And that's actually, a great user experience, in that I just, I had a conversation, things that were relevant came out in the conversation. And when it was done, someone said, hey, here's what I've put together for you. All I need you to do is sign off on it. that to me becomes the goal in any process where we're helping our clients discover what are we trying to create here. And you touched on it, Chris. It doesn't have to be 100% digital. Some processes need touch points. They want human interaction. So you have to think through it and just say, how would I do this? It's the same advice I give to someone if they're writing an email, from a management perspective. Like, are you being a human here? Like, is that, it's really easy to overthink so many things, but just treating it, saying it out loud. Is this natural? That should be the driving force. And then you're going to get it wrong. So you have to have the ability to see how that resonates, to see where there's gaps. And if you built your structure, your technology, your partners in a way that you can't redeploy, that you can't make the change to the front end of it without having to go back and do the entire project again, you're not going to be able to succeed. You're going to get one shot at it or two shots at it, and you're going to be out of the seat, or your team's going to be gone, or whatever it is, and you're not going to actually see it through. So making sure, be prepared, as you said, you're kind of that motto, being prepared to iterate on it, to get it wrong, but to evolve it is just, to us, the first step in creating that authentic experience.
Yeah. Cheers, Art. Thank you for those thoughts. LP, I'll come to you, because you mentioned some of the innovative work you're doing around cognitive analytics, sentiment analysis, and so forth. And the idea being, right, that we can, perhaps not at scale, but try to create a more empathetic experience for as many people as possible, but not perhaps fall into that scaling trap where you start to sacrifice some of those other things. How do you guys do it? I mean, how do you balance that kind of authentic, empathetic experience with technology and so forth?
Yeah, I think with the great resignation upon us, you better listen to the voice of your internal customer. Your CX will never be amazing if your UX is terrible. And so we do a lot of adjuster focus groups. I think when you're rolling out tech, you have to consider the WIFM. If they're not convinced that there's a what's in it for me or the customer, then you've lost at hello. So a couple of things we're doing is we are involving our business team in the rollout, and we are focusing from an empathy standpoint. Can we remove some of the transactional layers that lean into intelligent automation or RPA or other great tech that really is about transaction and processing? Because you can hear, I used to run our contact center, you could hear when someone was processing. There were those awkward pauses, and we were focused on our call model and in our engagement around, are you building context sensitive rapport? Are you listening? And what's the beauty about some of the IA tools, intelligent automation tools, is like with our SMS, we have sentiment analysis at scale, and we're continuing to grow the model. There's a positive bucket and there's a negative bucket. And there's a ton of rewards that you can give in that positive. And there's also some coaching and customer service recoveries. We're also using our CSAT data. We're indexing it against our technology initiatives. So I literally can prove out that paying digitally and chatting with customers about their claim has a huge impact. I can even go down a layer. We're working with our partner to look at what if the adjuster never responds after you opt in to chat with your claim. And there are material CSAT. There's a CSAT drain, right? So we're looking at what are the levers that are causing you maybe not to lean in, and we're trying to get it down to a manageable, engage our management team, get it down to an actionable area where we can drive sustained improvement. So sometimes our team goes in and we're doing focus group sessions. Did you realize how easy it is to pay? I know this was painful at the beginning, and to Art's point, we recognize the failure, but as soon as we recognize the failure, the learning can start. And we've had to go around and do some targeted feedback sessions to try to demystify the urban legend, because sometimes we do roll out and there is pain. It's not elegant. And then when we make it more elegant, or we see pockets of lack of adoption, we try to proactively work with the team, like, help us understand why you might not be using X. And I think if you approach it from that way and take some of that transactional components away, then I can focus on the experience. I can focus on more enriching things related to enrichment and aspirational and inspirational work. And that's where we're trying to get to. We don't have it solved. We have not boiled the ocean, Chris, but I try.
I feel like every time we speak, Laurie, you've made a ton of progress. So I think everything's going in the right direction. So that's awesome. Laurie, what are your thoughts there around kind of this move to create a more empathetic experience, but at the same time try to do it at scale?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Art and Laurie both have said. The claims process is inherently, an emotional time. For the most part, people don't go through a lot of claims. Ideally, they don't have a lot of claims, so it's a new experience. And so I think one of the things that I know that we all look at is that finding that right balance, allowing those interactions, the customer to decide how they want to interact. So, you're more than likely, very few companies are going to be solely digital, unless it's a company some of the startups, that's what they're known for, and that's the focus. But for more traditional carriers, we've been around for 110 plus years. I know Laurie's organization's been around for a long time. Those more traditional organizations aren't going to go 100% digital. So that's where you need to provide those different, we're trying to look at how do we provide those different interactions to be able to find that right balance. Mm-hmm. The other thing that was mentioned that I think is really important is you have to make your internal team happy. I heard that from both Art and Laurie, and I truly believe that. I mean, I honestly believe, we all know it. We've been on the phone with someone who you can tell, it doesn't matter what industry, they don't like their job. It's a job, and they're not happy in their job, and they're not saying anything wrong, but you hear it in their voice. So we really are focused on making the lives. It's so important to think about your internal team as you're thinking about the external customers. Think about your internal team, because the happier they are, the happier they're going to make your customers, because your customers are going to know if they're interacting with someone who's happy with their job, who likes their job, who's fulfilled with their job. They're going to know that. And so I think that those are two big areas where we really focus on and we really talk about a lot.
Yeah. Thanks, Laurie. Go ahead, Art, please. Yeah.
I just want to jump in on that, just because, we talk a lot, and we have today, about the employees in the context also of direct customer interaction, but we're seeing a lot also. Remember, their employees are a customer of yours as well in their day-to-day jobs. It could be on the HR side, it could be, any internal process, and we're seeing a lot more growth of people looking at that employee experience as an avenue, and it's also just around retention and attracting talent that are going to be motivated, that are going to be engaged. They have the same expectations, especially newer generations. You're talking about the Amazons and that user experience they're used to when they're dealing in their personal life, to then bring them into these traditional organizations, insurers, banks, and then here, I'm going to teach you some technology from 1984. That is really important, to keep them, and that they'll be engaged in their internal work, and that will reflect with the customers as well. And then that risk, and I just wanted to draw on that, is that, the one problem in that is you can't obviously replace everything, because if you just try and build it all brand new and you disregard your legacy systems, that's where you end up. You realize that there were gaps. Those things do things that have worked for 20 years, that you still need to find that balance between those core systems, but the training, the onboarding of internal staff is such an essential part to be able to give them the experience they want. They'll be happier. They'll find new ways to innovate for customers. They'll bring the new ideas out, and you won't be losing them to other, the forward organizations or my industry. Which I want them. I want the great people, but I totally, we're all looking to retain our staff these days.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Art. And I mean, it definitely comes back to that. Kind of, as you said, Laurie, the claims experience especially is an incredibly emotional one, and it's kind of, it's almost doing a disservice to team members who almost have to act like, kind of psychologists or whatever it might be, but it's a very burdensome, challenging role to take a lot of those phone calls, and we're trying to build an ecosystem that helps them do that more effectively. And so absolutely. So thank you for that. I think we have time for another, we may have time for another couple of questions, but this one I think really taps into the theme of today. And I'll put this out to LP. I'll start with you with this one. What are the biggest challenges to integrating new tech with an existing legacy landscape, and how do you blend this tech harmoniously? And it's quite a broad one, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, at ACG, one of the things that we do is we're looking at solutions. So I have a lot of insurtechs and IoT companies that approach me about, hey, we can take experiences from legacy if we can get the data out and then build the journey in the low tech, low code, no code platform. I would love to see us commit to citizen development. I have several team members on my team that I think we could be more agile if we embraced that agility within the business team, within our scope, with the right governance. And I'm seeing more companies, instead of trying to rip out the heart of the legacy systems, which they're very ingrained, and through merger and acquisition, we have different systems. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for us to continue to iterate out, even in legacy, while we're on this journey to modernize with some of our products. But that's not a quick light switch to turn on. So Chris, we're seeing many partners approach us like, hey, you don't have to rip out legacy. We can build the experience and latch onto legacy systems. And that's been very heartening. And I've seen a lot more of that even over the last year. So we're leaning in.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks. Laurie, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I agree. I think with what Laurie said, that there's been a huge change in the last year with companies that are out there that are recognizing that is one of the problems that we have in this industry, right? We have a lot of legacy systems, and how do we do that? And that is something that I know I'm seeing a lot more of as well. I also think that is where, and Laurie touched on this also at the beginning, it's really important for the business to partner with their IT partners and to have a really good relationship, have those conversations, walk through it, work together to find solutions. And that's, it's not an IT problem, it's an organization problem, but you need to work together. And that's one of the areas that I think we've made a lot of improvements. And one of the things that has allowed us to do some of the innovation that we have done is that partnership between claims and IT. Okay, this is the problem, but how do we solution it? And how can we work together? And how do we partner to get past it? And that's one way that we've gone about it.
Thanks, Laurie. And I love that you kind of mentioned the cultural aspects of it there, right? So when you think about digital transformation that we hear all the time, the fact that it sounds like you all embrace this vision of bringing the organization on that journey, not just kind of siloed departments or the innovation team who get to do all the fun stuff. It's like everybody's coming on that same journey, which I think is obviously a key part to success. Art, anything you would like to add there?
Only thing I'd like to add, and of course, is going to sound self-serving, but it's I couldn't agree more with what Laurie and Laurie said, because they basically did the better pitch of what Daylight does than I probably would have myself, which is really there are vendors out there whose entire mission is not to take your data, not to become the new silo of your data, but to say, hey, we're here to extend the value. You've made massive investments in RPA, in core systems, in workflow tools. What's often missing is the layer in front of it. How are we going to orchestrate the data between them? How are we going to create the journey to interact with them? Because what they do is phenomenal, but it's this extra little bit that would allow us to create a unique experience that's unique to our brand and our procedures and our policies. And I think that really is the future. It's not just a cycle of replace this big thing with another big thing. It's a lot of technology is great. It's about, are we maximizing our value from it? And, sometimes it's add something in so you can reduce, the underlying, but yeah, that's where why we started this business is we came from enterprise and we were, on the IT management side of things, and get exhausted of investing and say in something new to solve one problem. How do we create a layer in front of it? So I'm seeing that, thankfully, as a huge growth area.
Fantastic. Thank you, Art. And we are at 1 minute, so I think we're probably out of questions. But I do want to say a big thank you to all of you. This was a terrific discussion, and I spend a lot of time in the automation, customer service, customer experience space, and I think that obviously, I think tremendous advancements are being made, but it's still quite a delicate thing, trying to blend people, process, technology, and data in a way that delivers scale and self-service, but at the same time kind of brings in the empathy and compassionate angle. But again, thank you to all of you, to the people tuning in. Thanks to you as well. Reach out to the two Lauries and Art, very, very knowledgeable folks who are doing some really good work in this space. So thank you from me and Reuters. Cheers.
Pleasure talking to you all today.
Everyone.
Take care.